Hi everybody, it's Meg from Books Off the Beaten Path, and it is time for an afternoon book review, which is a special one because this is my first buddy read book review. And my buddy read is with Heather from Heather Reads, and I'm telling you, Heather and I, we have a thing. We have a thing. We are soul sisters, even though I think we're very different in several ways, and one of which I will mention during the review. But anywho, let me move this cord out of the way. Yeah. Anyway, I am going to be reviewing we had a buddy read. It was Daphne du Maurier's The House on the Strand. And I have a map. Heather's going to show you a map. I have a map too. But I couldn't read my map as well as Heather. So I didn't really spend any time with the map. Whatever. But anyway, The House on the Strand. Let's talk about it. Okay, you ready? Okay. The House on the Strand is fiction, and it's written by one of my favorite authors, Daphne du Maurier. And if you want to know more about Daphne du Maurier herself, go to Heather's video, because I didn't do the research that she did. But, which was very cool. Which is a cool Heather thing that she does. Heather researches and she tells you how long the book is and how much it would cost, everything like that. I don't do anything like that. I found this in the secondhand bookstore and I seized upon it because it was by Daphne du Maurier. So I have read from Miss du Maurier, I have read Jamaica Inn, Rebecca, The House on the Strand, and My Cousin Rachel. So I've read 4 of her books. And I'm telling you, I love her. I love her. I think she's great. I think now flat out, I'm just going to say before we get into the review or anything like that, Rebecca was my all-time favorite. And that's just period, full stop. Rebecca was my all-time favorite. But this one takes place, there's a dual timeline in it. And Heather mentions in her book review that it's kind of science fiction-y. I wouldn't go with that at all. I would say it's more fantasy. It's more fantasy driven because, and I don't want to give away too much of the story, but I'm not as good at keeping spoilers secret as Heather and other people are. But there's like potions and weird jars of creatures that you don't know what they are and everything like that. And then there's this big empty house and it's just wild. It's just a wild ride. But you have these 2 timelines. You have a timeline in 1969, and then you have the timeline in the 14th century, which would be like the 1300s. Which, let me tell you, they were both very interesting. I'll get back to that in a minute. Our protagonist's name is Richard Young, and she did a very Rebecca-like thing in it, in that I think she only mentioned his name once or twice. Like in Rebecca, you never know the narrator's name. But in this one, she only mentions it like once or twice. So you're not super familiar. I wasn't super familiar with his name. I know when his wife would call to him, she would say his name and everything like that. And I knew that. But it wasn't like, because it's told in the first person, it wasn't like Richard did this, Richard did that. It was like I did this and I did that. And you know what first person is. Anyway, so Richard is married to Vida. This is our 1969 timeline, and she's got 2 boys. It's a second marriage for Vida. I don't know what happened with the first husband, if he died or if she divorced him or he divorced her. I don't know, but she has since married Stephen. And one of my glaring questions that I did ask Heather was, do you think he loved her? Because frankly, I don't think he ever did. I think he might have been at one point sexually attracted to her. I'm having a seltzer, a flavored seltzer. It's non-alcoholic. Just so you know, let me take a sip. Good stuff, because it's hot here in Okie dokie. It's all this climate change. We're almost 70 in December. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, I don't think he ever loved her. I don't think he ever did. I think that he had an attraction to her, but I don't think he ever loved her. He might have even not respected her in a way, but we'll get to that in a second. So the deal is that there's this house in Cornwall, and his friend Marcus, who is just a nut. I mean, Daphne du Maurier really portrays him as kind of a mad scientist type of person. It's his house, and he says to Richard, go and stay there for the summer. I'm not using it. Have a wonderful time, because they were friends from school. And Richard has left his job in publishing, not sure what happened there, not sure if he was fired or if he quit or what happened there, but left his job in publishing and doesn't really want to do anything much at all, other than hang around the house and kind of be depressed. So that's what's going on with him. But and this is where I go back to, it's more fantasy than science fiction. There's potions and there's secret hiding places and walking sticks and everything like that. And what happens is Magnus has found a way to transport people to a different century. Now, the century seems to have no rhyme or reason. It's not like he said, I'm going to transport you to the early medieval ages or the late medieval ages or anything like that. It's just like this weird, like all of a sudden you're here and then all of a sudden you're there. And it's a lot about addictions. And one of the things that I valued so much about the book was I valued the way she wrote what happened to Richard when he was coming down from his addiction, which I thought was so cool. I mean, I don't want to see people suffer, but I didn't want him to get out of those situations clean. I wanted him to suffer. And suffer, he did. I wanted him to suffer because it's mind-bending what he's able to do, what he's able to achieve, and what he's able to do. And so I think that in my puritanical thought, I think there ought to be a consequence for that. I don't think you ought to get off scot-free if you're doing something so godlike. So let's get to Heather's questions, shall we? All right, so what we did was I wrote her some questions, and then she wrote me some questions. She wrote me the questions first, and then I wrote her back some questions, and her questions are flat out much better than mine. Some of my questions kind of suck. But they're not even written grammatically correctly. But anyway, here are Heather's questions, my high-tech piece of paper that I have here. Like Heather had them all up on the screen and like a split screen and everything like that. Now I can just hold my paper up if you'd like to. Okay, question number 1. In your opinion, are there any similarities between The House on the Strand and Rebecca or Jamaica Inn, and what are the biggest differences? Okay, well, first off, The House on the Strand is not a story I would ever expect from Daphne du Maurier. It is not. I think it had more similarities to Jamaica Inn than it had with Rebecca, because Rebecca to me is more of a ghost story, because I don't want to reveal too much about Rebecca, but I'm sure that most of you guys have read it or at least seen the movie. Rebecca's more of a ghost story. Jamaica Inn has an edge to it. It's not a ghost story, it's a brutal story. And I think that House on the Strand has that brutality in it. It doesn't have the same level of brutality as Jamaica Inn does, but it has a level of brutality in it. And so I would say that it's more like Jamaica Inn than it is Rebecca. But I also like the fact that the characters, like, nobody's completely happy. Nobody's completely unhappy. I mean, I think that that's one of the Du Maurier secrets, is to make these characters so real. They're so real because they have so many sides. They're multifaceted. They have so many sides. That's my answer to that one. Number 2, how compelling was the first 14th century story and its characters for you? Not that compelling, I have to say. I didn't really get that. I mean, I got it. I knew what was going on. Like, I could follow what was going on. But as Heather mentioned in her story, you have big leaps in time when you're in the 14th century story. And there's this guy in the 14th century story, Roger. And of course, he was one of my favorite characters. I loved Roger. And I would like to have known that Richard and Roger were somehow the same person, because anytime Richard is in the 14th century, Roger is there. But she doesn't give us that. She doesn't tell us that. She leaves that open to interpretation. The 14th century one was interesting. I thought it was interesting, but not nearly as interesting as the 1969 storyline. Not nearly as interesting as that. Okay. How compelling was the 20th century story? Well, the 20th century story was spot on. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was riveting. Like, when we were in the 14th century, I was like, okay, come on, let's get back and see, and see what happens. Because what Richard ends up doing, he feels like, or he interprets that what he is doing is self-contained, but it's not self-contained. It is affecting everybody that he comes into contact with, and not in a good way. It's affecting, which I think that you would find a lot of stories about addicts the same way. There is a scene in the book that where he mistakes Vita, his wife in the present day, for somebody in the 14th century, and he attacks her. And, it's all done under this haze of where he thinks he is and everything like that. But, just think about the Rob Reiner murders for a minute. And I'm wondering what the defense is going to be on that. And you can look at a person who has addictions and say, I realize that you're struggling with something, but I also think that you're being very selfish. And I thought that Richard was very selfish. So I thought that the 20th century storyline was much more compelling than the 14th century storyline. But the 14th century storyline was good. I mean, it had a lot of intrigue, and it had a lot of, court, hierarchies and everything like that, and what's happening here and what's happening there and everything like that. So it was good. Not as good as 1969. Okay. If you were ranking the Daphne du Maurier novels you have read so far, in what order would you put them and why? Okay, I would put Rebecca first because it's like a ghost story and it's classic, and the way it's done is so well. Love it. Number 1. I would put Jamaica Inn second because Jamaica Inn was brutally shocking for me. It was brutally shocking for me, and I couldn't believe that these smugglers, there's a lot of smugglers in Jamaica Inn, that the smugglers were that horrible. I mean, I believed it after I read the book. 100%. But, when you went into the book, you're like, oh, it's about smugglers. Well, that's kind of a romanticized figure and everything like that. No. horrible people. Stay away from smugglers. Then I would put House on the Strand, simply because I loved the 1969 storyline, and I love the show of the addiction and everything like that, and what happens after he comes down off of the addictions, which I thought was brilliant, the way she wrote that. And then I would put My Cousin Rachel, which had a lot of subterfuge in it, and it was a very subtle subterfuge. But it didn't resonate with me like the others did. It just really didn't. But House on the Strand, if you're wanting something pretty fast-paced, I thought it was a pretty fast-paced read. And I couldn't wait to get in bed at night and read it. I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 5-point start if I was doing Goodreads, which I'm not. But anyway, yeah, I loved it. And I love doing a buddy read with Heather. And I want to do a buddy read with Heather. And I want to do a buddy read with everyone. Except probably I won't do a buddy read with everyone, because I know too many booktubers now, and that would just be taking up all my time. But I'm definitely doing another one with Heather. But I wanted to show you. So do you guys remember a couple of videos back? This is totally off topic. Totally off topic. Do you remember a couple of videos back I told you about the little free library that looks like a church at my church? I went to church today. Someone stuck in another British crime classic, which I fell upon. And it's wonderful. It was written in 1936. It was written by Mavis Dorrell Hay. I don't know if it's wonderful yet because I haven't read it yet. It's called The Santa Claus Murder. And it's a country house murder. Who doesn't love that? And so somebody is looking out for me. Somebody at that church knows what I like. I mean, they don't. They're just putting books in. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not the center of the universe. I don't aspire to be the center of the universe. Okay, well, I aspire to it, but I'm not. All right, well, Heather, I love you. Thank you for doing this project with me. And I hope everybody gets a chance to read The House on the Strand. It's a wonderful book, great read. And when you read it, or if you've already read it, leave a comment and let me know what you think. And I will check you later.